Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
And we turn our attention first this morning, once again, to events on the other side of the Atlantic as Donald Trump continues to ride roughshod over all conventions and regulations almost with regard to dealing with the media and dealing with the public. And yet, really, there's a slight sense now of ossification, isn't there? It's almost as if, oh yeah, that's absolutely outrageous. Any other president who did that would have been impossible to contemplate, but here he is, carrying on. Where does it end? 0345 606 0973. In the second hour of the programme, we will return to that knife crime epidemic that is sweeping the streets of our country, and which some commentators, Harriet Harman included, believe is attributable to so-called drill music. I don't get this, to be honest with you. Yes, the music celebrates the violence and even the murderers themselves, but how does it cause the violence and the murders? I can't. We'll have a proper chat about it. I just find myself increasingly dismayed by the absolute immovability of some positions. You know, when these come around as regular as clockwork. It's not that long ago we were blaming Grand Theft Auto for crime on the streets of our cities, the video game. I'm not joking. Films, of course, have been blamed for crime on the streets of our cities. And when I find myself looking at some of the lyrics of so-called drill music, not only do I feel every one of my 46 years achingly, but I also wonder whether my age is a factor in my reactions, because I do find a little voice in the back of my head beginning to go, well, you know, maybe this is the exception that proves the rule. Obviously, it was ridiculous to suggest that Grand Theft Auto caused street crime and violence any more than football caused football hooliganism. But maybe this one's different. Just because all the other moral panics have turned out to be built on sand doesn't mean that this one isn't built on bricks. So we'll get stuck into that from 11. After 12, of course, it is Mystery Hour, and we will also be re-inaugurating, if that's even a word, the Nadine Dorries Award for weapons grade Brexit ignorance today. And the recipient of the award, I have to tell you, very, very worrying indeed. So do stand by for that. We might get a little statuette made. But we'll begin with Donald Trump, and not for the first time as we turn our attention to the American president. One wonders where to begin. I don't want to have a ding-dong. The White House is now telling lies. I mean, it's putting out doctored videos attempting to show that this CNN journalist did anything other than resist an attempt to remove a microphone from him briefly. The reason why Jim Acosta has been denied his White House pass is because he asked the president uncomfortable questions. And as right-wing people are normally very fond of saying as they green-light the removal of rights and freedoms from ordinary, usually poorer people, if you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to fear. Donald Trump looks terrified, but he's also brilliant at what he does. Make no mistake, he's like a sort of WWE wrestler, isn't he? And yesterday was showbiz. Yesterday plays across. So what's the point in engaging now? Now they're actually lying. The official press secretary is punting out videos that are doctored and deceitful in full knowledge that enough of his support base will be able to pretend that they believe it.
So barely have the results of the midterm elections sunk in, then a new drama for Washington. The future of Robert Mueller's investigation into alleged Russian collusion with the Trump election campaign team, after the president sacked the man who oversees it all. Reports claim that Special Prosecutor Mueller has begun writing his final report, but its fate could now depend on the acting Attorney General, Matt Whitaker, who's been openly critical of the investigation. Let's go live now to our Washington correspondent, Kylie Morris. Kylie.
Matt, in the past, I have tried to resist any comparisons to Watergate, the scandal that sank another president, Richard Nixon, but now we are very definitely in that zone. Now, Nixon, of course, tried to get his Attorney General to sack the special counsel investigating Watergate. Now, when that didn't happen, he sacked his Attorney General and appointed someone who would. Here we are, fast forward to President Trump. And as you say, a report is in the offing from the special counsel investigating him, Robert Mueller. And guess what? The president just sacked his Attorney General and has appointed a temporary replacement who thinks the special counsel needs reining in. The parallels are now real. It's a short drive from the White House to the Supreme Court. President Trump's motorcade zipped through the autumnal streets today under blue skies for the investiture of his newest conservative justice. His appointee, Brett Kavanaugh, now holds the swing seat on the court at a time when it's likely to have to rule on the very future of the president. Can he pardon himself? Can he be subpoenaed? Can he be indicted? Those questions became all the more urgent last night after the president sacked his Attorney General. This was the final farewell of Jefferson Beauregard Sessions. He attempted a noble exit from the Department of Justice, which he'd led for nearly 2 years. His staff dutifully applauded. He'd championed the Trump agenda, restricting immigration and introducing tougher punishment for drug offenders.
Therefore, I have recused myself.
But despite that, the president had belittled him for more than a year over his decision to recuse himself from overseeing the special counsel's investigation into alleged links between the Trump campaign and Russia.
My name's Jeff Sessions. Would you like a chocolate?
He was lampooned on Saturday Night Live as the hapless Southerner in the style of Forrest Gump.
I'm the Attorney General of the whole United States.
But if we're doing Saturday nights, maybe the Saturday Night Massacre is more relevant.
Good evening. The country tonight is in the midst of what may be the most serious constitutional crisis in its history.
The name given to the night when, in 1973, as shown by this NBC News report, President Nixon forced the resignation of his Attorney General, who refused to fire the special prosecutor investigating the Watergate scandal. He sacked his deputy too, until finally he found someone who would do his bidding.
Nothing like this has ever happened before.
Last night, Jeff Sessions shook hands with his successor, Matthew Whitaker, who had been his chief of staff. The new acting Attorney General has already made clear his opinion that the Mueller investigation needs to be reined in. In an op-ed for the CNN website last year, he wrote, "Mueller has come up to a red line in the Russia 2016 election meddling investigation that he is dangerously close to crossing." He expressed a similar view as a guest on a CNN show.
Is that if Bob Mueller and his small U.S. Attorney's Office, as I've heard it described today, does go beyond the 2016 election and get into Trump organization finances unrelated to the 2016 election and really unrelated to Russian coordination, if it even exists, I think that would be crossing a red line.
Perhaps President Trump saw that on CNN and liked it, although he says he doesn't watch the network anymore.
If I may ask one other question.
The White House correspondent for CNN, which the president has declared an enemy of the state,
Pardon me, ma'am.
lost his press pass after the president berated him at yesterday's press conference.
On the Russia investigation,
You are a rude, terrible person. You shouldn't be working for CNN.
A silent, edited version of what happened, which creates the impression the reporter chopped at the aide's arm, was tweeted out by White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders. She accused Jim Acosta of placing his hands on a young woman.
And it's just unfortunate that the White House is saying this. This is a test for all of us. I do think they're trying to shut us down to some extent.
The president now prevails over a White House willing to shut down reporters and an acting Attorney General willing to curtail the Mueller inquiry. Things for him are turning out nicely. It is difficult to know where this goes now. There are provisions that protect Bob Mueller from the president's power. For example, if he decides he wants to indict the president, that is, charge him with a criminal offence, he can tell the Attorney General that he wants to do that. And even if the Attorney General then rejects that, it all then has to go to Congress, and both of them have a chance to argue their cases, which means that we would find out about what Robert Mueller has found. But there are also lots of other ways this could go. What is clear is the president is feeling unrestrained, emboldened. Remember, after the midterms, he has the Senate now very much firmly on his side, as well as a new acting Attorney General.
Cardi, thanks very much indeed.
Incredible. I don't know what happens next. I enjoyed seeing the journalist who stood up after Jim Acosta offer his support. All respectable journalists in America should and hopefully will do the same. But the bottom line, of course, becomes they can't. Their job is to report on what's going on in the White House. You can't boycott the White House. Our systems, Western liberal democracies, the values that we are supposedly so proud of, that we export them around the world down the barrel of a gun, our systems can't cope with this. What do you do if the president is a liar? Because you report what he says. That's a news story. If Donald Trump breaks wind, it's a news story. But if he lies, how do you report it? You know, to have a video removed from Fox, an advertisement removed from Fox News for being too racist. From Fox News. That, of course, is part of what the CNN journalist was trying to ask him about, this depiction of a tragic convoy of dispossessed and desperate people as being some sort of invading army, despite being hundreds and hundreds of miles away from the American border and consisting largely of terrified, hungry children. It's insane what's happening now. It's almost... I'm not going to lie to you. When I first started using the F word to describe what Donald Trump was up to, the normalization of sexual assault, the demonization of foreigners, the depiction of all Mexicans as rapists, all migrants as criminals, questioning Barack Obama's citizenship of America because he is black. That's the only reason Donald Trump had it. All of these hallmarks of fascism, hating the press, describing the truth as a lie, and describing a lie as the truth. You tick these boxes as you go down the list of all of the hallmarks of a burgeoning fascistic regime, and yet still, because it's America, come on. It can't actually be the F word. It can't actually be fascistic. And then, you know, within days of a radicalized Trump supporter sending bombs to CNN, Donald Trump stands up in the White House and directs personal vitriolic abuse. They called him a terrible man at a journalist from CNN. What does he think's going to happen next? What does he want to happen next? I dread to think. So, what do we do? What do we do? I don't want to have a debate today, because there is no point. I fully accept that some people want to believe something that isn't true. So the video is not the story here. The story here is a president absolutely dismantling some of the most basic premises of democracy, of a functioning democracy. So I don't know if that's a mistake. Give me a ring and tell me and talk to me about why you believe something that is demonstrably false. Why do you prefer to believe the evidence of a deliberately doctored video than the evidence of your own eyes? What is it that he offers to you that makes you surrender any faith you have at all in truth and honesty? How has he turned you into such a massive liar? But then I think you're playing his game, because you turn around, or Trump turns around and says that you're being insulted or spoke. You believe something that's not true. Consciously, you know it's not true. Donald Trump has told thousands of lies since becoming president. They have been documented and recorded, thousands of demonstrable untruths. And I suppose what most of us find so puzzling is the fact that his fans don't care. There was one woman who was interviewed, actually, during one of his recent rallies, and she said, I don't care. It was pointed out to her that he told lies on the stage, and she said, I don't care. She said something quite profane, actually, about genitals. If he grew a third appendage live up on the stage, she'd still love him. I don't quite know where that came from, but it was an astonishing clip. So I don't think that works. There's no point me sitting here and saying, give me a ring if you believe a lie, and I will defend the position of not lies. But that's what he's turned America into, isn't it? He's turned America into a debate about whether the truth is true or not. That's what fake news was always designed to do. They don't really care what you believe as long as there is no objective truth. There is no fact. Facts are fake news. And it's worked. It's worked brilliantly. I don't know where it leads. I can't see where it goes being pretty, can you? And I can't see how you reverse from this, how you get the genie back in the bottle. Objectivity has been completely undermined, and it culminated yesterday in this doctored video being put out with the footage speeded up to make it look like Jim Acosta had inflicted some sort of blow upon the poor woman charged with steering the microphone around the room. So that yesterday will go down in history. It's a key moment. It's sort of conscious that we're in some ways talking about the wrong thing, but in terms of truth and journalism, November the 7th, 2018 is a very, very, very dark day, because it's the day the White House stopped pretending. The press secretary sits there, contemplates the rightness or wrongness of lying to the American public in a way that is so easily provable. That's the point. That's what fake news has done. Remember that call we took from, oddly enough, a British Trump supporter during the brouhaha about that funny balloon that some jokers were going to fly of Donald Trump during his visit to London. And I said to him, he was in Crawley, wasn't he? He was going to get his drone and fly it at the balloon. And I said to him, what about when he mocked that disabled reporter on your screen? And the fellow said, fake news. And I said, what about when he insulted the families of the Gold Star soldier who was killed? He could insult them, of course, because the dead soldier was a Muslim. He said, fake news. I said, you actually saw it on the screen. Fake news. And it was really interesting. It was funny, but not quite as funny as some of you thought, because it's quite chilling as well, because that was evidence of how it happens, how it works. I never thought it could happen here, as in the West, as in actually the English-speaking West, because we know that it's happened in Italy and Germany and Spain. I just didn't think it could happen here. And we've now reached critical mass. There it is. Press secretary looking at fake film, faked footage, and thinking, we'll put that out and say it's the truth. And remember, when everybody who tells the truth turns around and says that's fake, that little phrase fake news has gone to work, because it's false equivalence. Well, you said our news is fake, we'll say your news is fake, who knows what's true? Well, you know what's true, I know what's true, they all know what's true, just that half the world's pretending not to. It's really, really weird. What question am I going to ask you? I think I'm going to ask you my most favourite question of all. 0345 6060 973. What's going on? I mean, what is going on? I think, and a lot of people have taken me to task for this, I think that the likelihood of Donald Trump being re-elected as president has gone up in the last 24 hours. And I'm struggling to understand why people are untroubled by such self-evident danger. What's going on? 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. And how do you do it? I mean, the gap between choosing to believe something that's demonstrably faked, the gap between that and just simply saying, well, that's real and that's not, the gap is so huge. It's a psychological gulf that I don't know how to bridge. How do you bridge it? The president is a pathological liar. And now he has turned vicious, vitriolic personal abuse upon a member of the Free Press. A member of the Free Press who works for an organisation that has already been targeted by a radicalised, Trump-supporting terrorist. You put it like that, you kind of would have thought, wouldn't you, 3 or 4 years ago, that even if you were slightly to the right of Genghis Khan or slightly to the left of Vladimir Lenin, we could have all agreed, yeah, that's not on. I just thought there were rules that we all played by, you know? And that's why I never thought fascism was something that could rise in our world, in our time. But yesterday we saw some of the most fundamental rules of reality being absolutely broken. Absolutely broken. And I don't know even if they're fixable. Give me a call, where in many ways we're kind of, despairing's not quite the right word, but something broke in America yesterday. The very basic, fundamental principle of truth broke. Donald Trump has told thousands and thousands of documented lies, but yesterday his press secretary put out a doctored video to malign a journalist who had committed the unpardonable offence of asking Donald Trump questions he didn't like. I don't know how you fix it. 0345 6060 973. 1984, of course, tells us that the party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command. Yesterday, Donald Trump's White House reached that stage. Do not trust the evidence of your eyes and ears. Trust what we tell you. Staying with Orwell, that moment in Animal Farm when they put the new rules on the barn wall, and the animals said, when did the rules change? The rules changed yesterday. I don't know what the new rules are. Alex is in Haverhill in Suffolk. Alex, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome.
I kind of think that this is a product of the times, really, and a product of a quite a significant ramping up of politically motivated bias in news on all sides, especially since social media sort of really come up. And I don't think it is going to change, because what you have now is you have...
But it's not new. I mean, look at those Orwell quotes, those 2 Orwell quotes, 2 books dedicated to the rise of fascism, and he perfectly calls it there. The notion of do not trust the evidence of your own eyes and ears, and the notion of just changing the rules about everything and pretending that it was always like this. It's not new.
No, I know it's not. I know it's not new. But what is new is the complete kind of just the sheer amount of information and news. And I think what it does is it pushes people to have to categorically pin their colours on a mast. And, you know, you'll do that from what perhaps it will be to do with your environment, where you live, where you're from. But the point is, once they're on that mast, they're on it for good. And
but why? That's the strange thing. And the gap between these two camps is unbridgeable. Let me just have a little look. And I'm not that interested today in arguing with people who are choosing to believe something that's not true. But to give you a flavour of it, face facts, James, and open your eyes and ears. The reporter was downright rude and showed total disrespect to Trump. This is the president who said he's a terrible man.
Yeah.
I mean, it is... It is incomprehensible to me that someone like this can look at that film and see so many things that were not there. CNN has had an agenda since Trump was elected, and that's the reality, not fake news. CNN, which, if you like, goes down the middle path, and then Fox News, which is unapologetically supportive of the president and amplifies his lies and lets his rhetoric go unchallenged. People are persuaded that there is a sort of equivalence between the two, that they're two sides of the same coin. And I don't know how you unpersuade them if they're determined to believe stuff that they know deep down isn't true. How do you break that spell?
No, but do they know it's
They
not
must
true?
do, because it's there in front of them. You heard the guy on. Did you hear the guy on this programme? It's saying, you've seen the video of him mocking the disabled journalist. Fake news, James. Fake news. They know it's true.
Yeah. No, but I don't think they do. I think because, you know, I mean, you know, there's plenty of arguments for the existence philosophical arguments that disprove the existence of God, but people aren't willing to.
That's not the same.
Well.
That's not the same. Here is a video. No one's ever. No. Here is video evidence of him doing something. Here it is, recorded on your screen, and the response is he never did it.
Yeah, but I think that is just purely. I mean, it's a product of brainwashing, and it's completely the same on both sides of the spectrum. On the more extreme sides, you know,
it's not the same. Give me an example of someone who is the opposite of Trump, choosing to believe something they know not to be true, something that is easily demonstrated as not being true.
I'm not necessarily saying the facts, but in how politically and sort of agenda-driven news is. It doesn't put people in a position where they can critically analyse things, because everything is.
It's there, mate. It's possible I'm not fully understanding your theory, but my question really is getting simpler by the second. And the question is: here is some undoctored film of something happening. How can you deny that it happened?
Well, it's a really good point. And I mean, I'm not a psychologist. I mean, I wish I could.
Nor am I. And I've got a horrible feeling the history books can't tell us either, because it's like a sort of collective delusion falls upon a population as the, you know, those ancient tools. I guess they just work really, really well on some people, and they don't work at all on other people. So look, here's a few thousand desperate, hungry children and adults making their way from incredibly horrible realities in places like Honduras, and you can tell somebody they're coming here to nick your money, they're coming here to rape you, they're coming here to kill you, and some people will believe it. Okay, I get that. Here is a video of something happening, and people say it never happened. That I don't get. That's the bit I don't get. I know how propaganda works. Goodness me, we all do. But I don't get the bit about being blind, willfully blind. Jason I've got some phone lines free if you're quick. 0345 606 0973. Jason's in Bath. Jason, what's going on?
Hi, how you doing? I've been following this closely this morning and looking at the videos, and yes, clearly something did happen. Whether or not it's classed as placing your hands on somebody.
No, you've done it. No. We're in the hole already. It's not even debatable what happened there. That's what he's done. This is what I mean. You're a decent fella. You're ringing me. I'm a decent fella. You've gone down without noticing the route that they've set for us, which is to have a debate about whether he actually did this or did that. He didn't. He categorically didn't. Someone tried to take the microphone off him, and he tried not to let go for a few seconds. That's it. The president's insulting him from the podium. The president is sort of preening at him and throwing his arms out from the podium, calling him names from the podium, and we're not talking about that. We're talking about what they wanted us to talk about, which is why they put out the fake film. And we're not going to talk about it. We're going to talk about people who are being shown evidence of an incontrovertible fact, and they are looking you in the eye and saying it never happened. How has that come about?
I think it comes, society nowadays, everybody's so sensitive and quick to sort of try and generate some momentum somehow with the power of social media to get people to understand their point, or to, rightly or wrongly, is a point that they want to put across.
Arguably, that should have the opposite effect, shouldn't it? Because this is what Tim Berners-Lee says about the internet in general. He thought it would be a force for good because it would make truth easier to achieve. But what fake news, as a philosophy, has done is render everything deniable. Everything's deniable now, even the evidence of your own eyes, and that is terrifying.
Yeah, I just think don't get me wrong, I'm not a Trump supporter. I don't believe in any of the stuff that's going on there on that side. But I feel that with my own eyes, I saw on that video him push his hand down. Yes, it happened. Whether or not it's classed as placing your hands on somebody, no. But I think they're using it to their advantage because.
Mate, I hate to break it to you, but you're doing their work for them. I've given you chapter and verse on why this is not a conversation about whether something that didn't happen happened. And you're doing it. You're having a conversation about, well, I've watched the film and I've done this. The story here is about the President of the United States of America singling out the representative of an organization that has already been targeted by a terrorist radicalized by him. A Donald Trump fan sent a bomb to CNN. And now Donald Trump is directing personal, deliberate vitriol at a CNN journalist. This is the West, and he gets away with it because there'll be someone, and I'll probably find it in my inbox during the next break, somebody saying, well, CNN deserve it. I had one already, didn't I? CNN have got an agenda. So the people are cool with it. This is the point, that the so-called liberal media has been so slow to pick up because the so-called liberal media is a little bit worried and shy and frightened of using words like fascist or white supremacist. They can't quite believe that it's happening on their watch. But there it is. Just think of it like this. A radicalized Trump-supporting terrorist sent a bomb to CNN. And yesterday, Donald Trump incited more violence, more negativity, and more vitriol against a journalist from CNN. Western democracies cannot cope with Islamist hate preachers or white supremacist presidents who are simultaneously ridiculous and profoundly dangerous. We don't know what to do. So call me and tell me what we should do. It's odd, and perhaps it's a little bit self-aggrandizing to say so, but I'm speaking about the whole genre of radio phoning rather than simply this one. But the crazy callers, as it were, are in charge. People, Alex Jones would be a great example, Donald Trump's favourite journalist, who is committed to persuading people that the parents of children murdered in a school massacre are actors and that the whole thing was a hoax. And think about that. That was the moment of pivot when Donald Trump was describing outfits like the New York Times and CNN as fake news, but was courting a man who literally sells fake news for money. That was a pivot, and it creates an environment in which the truth is debased. Isaac Asimov predicted this, the science fiction author who didn't just write science fiction. This is one of those quotes that is actually true. So some of my all-time favourite quotes turn out not to be true. There's no evidence that Keynes, for example, ever said, when the facts change, sir, I change my mind, what do you do? It's a brilliant line, doesn't stop it being a brilliant line. Mark Twain and Oscar Wilde often get attributed lines that neither of them ever said, but they said enough brilliant stuff that it doesn't matter. But this is the real deal from Isaac Asimov. The strain of anti-intellectualism has been a constant thread winding its way through our political and cultural life, nurtured by, and here it is, the false notion that democracy means that my ignorance is just as good as your knowledge. That's the point now. So if you're, and that's why people say it's an opinion. It's not an opinion. you know, on whether or not water is hot. You stick your head out the window to find out whether it's raining and you get wet. It is not an opinion that it's not raining. And yet now, in the media, in America and Britain, you'd have two people in the studio, both soaking wet, one of them insisting it's not raining. It's nuts, and it leads inexorably to that caller we took from he's made my book, actually, because it is one of those calls that stops traffic. I'll give you a little reminder of it, I think. What about mocking disabled journalists? Where do you stand on that?
Where do you stand on fake news, James?
Well, I'm passionately opposed to it, Jack, but you can't answer a question with a question. I'm amused that...
I can't do it. I can't answer fake questions with fake answers. Sorry, mate.
Well, it's not a fake question. How do you feel about mocking disabled journalists?
Fake news.
Well, we've seen the pictures, Jazz.
Oh, fake news.
So the pictures are fake?
Fake news.
How do you feel about mocking the families of Gold Star families?
Gold Star families. Again, fake news.
Okay, but you've seen it on your screen, Jazz.
I've seen it, mate.
How do you know the Donald Trump balloon isn't fake news? Why have you chosen to believe this? So there it is, and you, like me, think that is freakish and outlandish and extraordinary. But there are enough people like that in America to elect Donald Trump again as president. And two questions: what is going on? Number one. Number two, what do they get in return? Tony is in Manor Park. Tony, what would you like to say?
Yeah, hello, James.
Hello, Tony.
Well, it's funny because I've been tapping into this and I've been following it.
Go on.
And one of the things I always look at is I always say, look, sometimes people look for a Messiah. And when they find that Messiah, they will stick with that Messiah. They will not change. And whatever that Messiah says, they will stick with it. And that's what's happening with Donald Trump. He's just tapped into that. He's tapped into that, and he's got I'd say 40% of the American population following him and believing him and sticking with him no matter what he does and what he says. And the very fact is, it's true what Hillary Clinton said in the first place. The bulk of his followers have got that mindset, that racist mindset. And it's that he's tapped into, and he's fed it, and he continues
but I can imagine being a racist, right? I can imagine being a racist. Oh, look, there's a person with different colour skin from me. I'm going to base my opinion on them on that colour of their skin. There you go, I'm a racist. I still can't watch a film and then deny that it actually happened, like that caller you just heard. Can you?
Yeah, but yes, you can, because that's what I'm saying. He's tapping into it. That's what Donald Trump is tapping into.
But I'm holding up a carrot in front of you, and you're swearing blind it's an onion.
Because it's fake. As he says, it's fake news. And they believe him because he's tapped into their system. And their system is what they were looking for. They've been waiting for him. And he's come. He's their Messiah. And no matter what we say, I say, you say, I can call Donald Trump a racist all day. But they're not going to believe that. They're not going to believe it.
I don't know if you're giving me the why or the what, Tony. I mean, because essentially you're saying... I think you're just repeating what I'm saying back to me in a slightly different order of words. You're not giving me the why, because I did just say, what do they get in return? And your answer to that would be either they're allowed to be vile in public again, they're allowed to blame all their problems on foreigners and Mexicans.
That's right. That is what they're getting.
And that's such a heady brew, is it? That's such a heady brew. This is the thing that I can't get my head around. The idea of that offer, that invitation being so powerful and seductive that people will leave their faculties at the door.
That's right, because that's why they say call a spade a spade. You understand? They're coming out with the sayings. They are actually feeling free because he's allowed that to...
And crikey, who wouldn't want to live in a world where you get to decide what's true and what isn't? Oh, boy.
Well,
that's it, mate.
As long as it's acceptable...
No, that's it. You've done it. That's it. I can watch Fox and watch Trump, and I can create the illusion that this is real, and that all my problems are because of foreigners, and that black people are inferior, and that gays don't deserve equal rights, and that women are getting above themselves, and the sooner that they're chained to the kitchen sink again, the better for everybody concerned. I get to just sort of squint a bit and pretend that what I can see is the real world. And if the President of the United States of America is joining in, then... who's going to stop me?
This is what I'm saying. They've got their Messiah. They've tapped into it. And now they're open and they're coming out freely. And no matter what I say, you say, anyone about Donald Trump, they will not have it. And they're not going to have it. And like what you said, he's likely to get a second term if the people don't motivate themselves to get up and go out there and vote. You've got to vote. You've got to get out there and you've got to stop this man, because this man is he's doing so much damage.
Yeah, but he's not going to damage me because fake news, man. My life's great.
Right.
Okay, so
the damage has been done. We're just not waking up to it until we're going to wake up when it's too late, and that's the point we're saying.
What is too late? He's already got radicalised terrorists sending bombs to innocent civilians and people that he targets.
But we can stop it, James, and that's the thing. We as I said, all we got to do is we've got to look at the people, the other 40%, and that 20% that don't go out and vote, because that's the hold up. It's the in between. It's the in-betweeners.
Yeah, of course it is. But again, I suppose that's even more baffling, is that, I mean, millions and millions of people vote for someone who tells them lies, but they're comforting lies. They're comforting lies, and what have the other side got? Same thing they've always got. Complicated truths, difficult truths, comforting lies. Is it that simple? Tony's a brilliant caller. And I'd just give a quick mention to the several million people who texted in to say he's not the Messiah, he's a very naughty boy. But I mean, that is it, isn't it? It's this idea that I get to decide what's real. I'm sick of being told what's real by scientists and economists and bankers and journalists with their facts. I'm sick of it. I want to believe what I want to believe. And Donald Trump lets me. Andrew's in Weston. Andrew, what would you like to say?
Sorry, first-time caller.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. Well, I was sort of contemplating the fact that this morning what's his name, Ferrari show was on.
Yes,
and they were concentrating on the knife. But all I'm saying is he quoted the Trump thing about London being a war zone.
Right. I mean, Nick's gone now, so...
No, he's gone. But the point is that that's quoted. He's gone. I know, but it's stuck in my, my throat. Because what about the almost every week wholesale carnage in America?
Yes.
Is that not something that could have counterbalanced that point and said, well, today I think we had another great big sort of horror story in Southern California.
Yes,
the week before we had the synagogue, and but it's all right for him. I call him the Old West sort of snake oil.
Yes, he is a snake oil salesman. Of course he is, and we remain confused why people carry on buying snake oil after it has failed to make their hair grow back.
It's the times we're in. His ideology or whatever is selling, and he is.
And it's all xenophobic. So just to pick up on the knife crime war zone business and the reason why, I mean, it's all xenophobic. It's this idea that the immigration is creating no-go areas, or you've got people who've never left Texas who are convinced that I can't walk out of this studio and walk a mile in any direction without encountering Sharia patrols or something like that. So he will ignore his own base committing acts of terror, but claim that somehow the knife crime problems we've got in this country, he will use them to stoke up xenophobic fear of the other, fear of foreign. So if a white bloke commits a massacre like the one in Las Vegas, not a word, not a flipping sausage about it. But some, one person dies or 5 people die in London, suddenly he's tweeting about it furiously. I mean, it's not complicated, but of course then we struggle, Andrew, to understand why. I'm not saying people are too stupid to see through it. I'm saying people are choosing to pretend that they can't see through it, and I don't know why.
Well, exactly. And in a sense, he is the master of deflection, and also he's using some of the oldest tricks in the book. Unify a nation against a common enemy.
Yeah, of course, it's Goebbels, straight out of the Goebbels playbook. And you know what else we've done? What, the other trap we've fallen into? Which, I mean, as a phone-in host, I kind of have no choice. But we're not talking about the fact that he sacked the Attorney General, the man who has or had the power to stop the Robert Mueller investigation. He'd removed himself, hadn't he, from that? He'd recused himself from the investigation. Trump sacked him yesterday, and we're all talking about a press conference.
Well, he does also have that,
dead cat.
Sort of goose-stepping sort of thing of shooting down.
But he can't be.
Any criticism.
That's
so
right. Yeah, terrible man. You're a terrible man. You're fake news.
CNN.
You're disgusting. You're all of these things. It's so bizarre to watch it being so obvious, and then to acknowledge that up to half of our fellow men and women are choosing to swallow it. That word, it doesn't work. It's doing a lot of work, that word choosing. I'll tell you what's really, really, really struck me in the last couple of years. All those years we were watching films like Star Wars and just presuming that everybody was on the side of the Rebel Alliance. I had no idea that half the audience in the cinema when I watched Star Wars was actually rooting for Darth Vader. It is 10:51. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I think in the next hour we will award today's Nadine Dorries Award for weapons-grade Brexit ignorance. And I have to tell you that the recipient of that award today it's very, very worrying who's going to get it. It's to do with the Dover-Calais border. Imagine a prominent Brexiter saying, I had no idea how important the Dover-Calais border was. But when I tell you just how prominent a Brexiter it is, you, like me, will feel a very familiar frisson of horror. Not quite, of course, as profound a frisson of horror as you would get watching the White House. So should we have a little listen to some of the stuff that went on? Because it really was next level. But I realised, just the shorter clip, I realised, actually, speaking to the last caller, or the last caller but one, that we've fallen for it as well. I couldn't do a phone-in about him sacking Jeff Sessions as a precursor to trying to close down the Mueller investigation. Because, of course, that's not really a phone-in topic, is it? And this is what I've just been nudging you towards in the last few months, or nudging myself towards. This notion of opinion replacing news. So what are we actually doing with regard to what happened in America yesterday? Well, we're having an exchange of, on one side facts, and on the other side opinions. But now, because we're giving so much oxygen to the opinions, it means the facts start to look like opinions as well. If you need an illustration of just how corrupt Trump and his supporters are, and how much corruption they have visited upon society at large, consider this. Trump supporters are supremely comfortable expressing their admiration of a man who boasts about grabbing women by the vagina. But apparently they're absolutely outraged at the prospect of a man putting a hand on a woman's arm. There it is. And these are the people I'm so intrigued by. How can you persuade yourself that it's okay to grab a woman by the vagina, but it's not okay to put your hand on her arm? And that's where he's led you. He's taken people to a place where they will furiously defend his right to grab women by the vagina, but furiously attack his critics' alleged placing of a hand on an arm. So what you have now is a White House that claims to have banned a journalist from its premises for the fake offence of putting his hands on a woman. And the same White House is occupied and run by a man who boasts about putting his hands on a woman's vagina. That's Trump's America. Crikey. Natalie's in Hammersmith. Natalie, what would you like to say?
Hi, yeah, I was going to say, I think I completely agree with what you were saying there about the sort of false equivalency, because if you look at the demographics of the midterm, what you've seen is that a lot of white suburban women have turned away from Trump. I mean, no one thought that they would vote for him in 2016, but they did. And somehow they were able to disconnect from that. But I think all the stuff that's been going on, especially with the Kavanaugh hearing, the White House deliberately, they were going to make a scene at this press conference because they needed to detract attention from the Sessions news that was going to come out shortly afterwards. But what actually happened was quite genius, because they've created a situation where they can say, no, but look, your side do the same because he put his hands on. So you've got a thing where you can say to a woman now, but hang on, what about Kavanaugh? What about the accused? Oh, yeah, but, it's on both sides. It's on both sides. So you've got that kind of...
Yeah. False equivalence.
You're giving them something.
That's it, isn't it? I mean, but then I think back to that fellow who we played out a moment ago, Here is film of him abusing the grieving parents of a dead American soldier. Here is recorded footage of him abusing a disabled journalist, mocking the disability, and that these people can claim with a straight face that it never happened.
But I think what they're claiming is that it's been doctored in the same way that Sanders has doctored the footage to run it on a loop on her Twitter account. So it looks a lot worse than it is because they've sped it up. Because when you watch in real time, all he does is just put his arm down on her to say, no, I'm still
Well, you know that, and I know that. But the thing is, they know that as well. But they need to believe the opposite, and that's the bit that I think we struggle with. And that's where, I forget the name of the fellow who called him a messiah, was so powerful, because he does sort of move it into the realms of putting faith above fact.
I completely agree with that. The only other thing I was going to say was that one of the things that has really hurt the Democrats in the past, and especially sort of with the dawn of the Me Too movement and everything, is that, you know, one of the great presidents, Bill Clinton, unfortunately, you know, you can't look at what happened with Lewinsky and not see it as an abuse of power.
Absolutely it was, which is why he was impeached and investigated for years by Kenneth Starr.
Yeah, exactly. But that's my point. The right will always turn to that. So
what about? Yeah, but. It's yeah, buttery, isn't it? It's always yeah, buttery. Exactly, yeah, but. We get it. We had it earlier this week on the programme. It was surreal in its irrelevance to the conversation we were having. And I guess the ultimate, the holy grail of yeah, buttery is, yeah, but what about her emails?
Exactly, and it's sort of like, well, neither is correct, but
Sure.
But one is demonstrably worse.
Well, he's got two campaign managers jailed. His lawyer is facing criminal charge. I mean, everyone close to him, slowly, they're falling like dominoes and actually going to prison. But his base still shouts, lock her up, because something about emails that they don't understand. And, of course, yesterday, when he actually called Jim Acosta disgusting, as one of my texters has pointed out, that Jim Acosta could have turned around and said, well, I've never snuck off to have sex with a pornographic actress while my wife was giving birth. That's pretty disgusting. And yet his base are cool with the second behaviour and outraged by a journalist asking questions. They're cool with him grabbing women by the vagina, but allegedly, supposedly outraged by a man essentially...
Well, they blame the porn star because it's...
Of course they do, because it's always women's fault, and that's where the evangelical Christians come in, portraying you all as temptresses.
Yeah, well, you know, she should have known better, so...
Yeah, it's just boys being boys, you know, just banter, locker room talk, all of that. 10:57, Natalie, thank you. David's in Hampton Court. David, what's going on?
I'm in the dilemma, James. I've got through to you on this, and I want to get through on Mystery Hour.
Oh, well, you've blown it. No, not allowed, I'm afraid. You'll have to wait till next week. But don't spoil it. We've only got a minute and a half left.
Very quickly, if I was the journalists in Washington, I'd all get together and just boycott the White House. I would remove myself from the press conference and starve him of the oxygen of publicity, because that's what he wants. That's what he thrives on. And I think that the press have got to take a stand. They've got to say this is just one step too far. You cannot use the pulpit of the presidency to
but
unilaterally...
Fox won't do. Fox will stay, won't they? And a couple of other weird ones, and the whatever springs up to replace the awful mess that InfoWars was, and he could end up with a kind of Nazi-style supine press. Look what Orban has done in Hungary. You can essentially, if you do it voluntarily, I worry that you're doing his work for him. You close yourself down. You stop reporting on the White House. That's what he wants.
But there has to be a stand somewhere, James. This can't continue.
Well, you say that, but there's loads of people are loving it, mate.
But, you know, there has to be a tipping point somewhere where this can't continue, because otherwise, as you rightly say, we lead down the path of 1984 and fascism.
Yeah, well, it's not 1984, it's fiction. You don't need to reach for fiction to say what happens if it doesn't stop. I love you, David, but I'm further down the road than you are. Because I no longer think it must stop. Something will happen. Something will come along. It's the only parallel I draw this out with Brexit. There's that sense somewhere inside that this madness can't be allowed to continue. The grown-ups will turn up and stop it. Mate, there aren't any grown-ups. Trump's done it. It's broken. He can tell a lie to his base and they will swear blind that it's true. And even respectable news organisations will allow the idea that the lie is true to be debated in a studio. We're all doomed. We move on now to something completely different. A story that